Hey guys, it's ayebeepee again, and we are here with another cult Christmas. And today we are talking about the Vallow family. The best place I think that we can start off in this crazy story is with Lori. She was born June 26, 1976, and lived in San Bernardino, California. She had quite a few siblings. She had two older brothers, Adam and Alex Cox, and then she had three sisters, Stacy, Laura, and Summer. Her childhood seemed to be very normal, and she was very attractive and even competed for Miss Texas. She was very charismatic, popular, and a faith-based woman. She was Mormon, but Adam has talked about how her and Alex ended up getting into some questionable religious beliefs. And Lori was known to talk about death a lot and how great it would be and how her kids wouldn't suffer in the next life. She was known to be a great mother. She was great with her kids, always there for everything they needed. But she did have this thirst for excitement. She grew impatient and frustrated very easily and was a little selfish, and her partners were the ones that ended up taking the brunt of it. And I would like to point out at the beginning here that her beliefs do not line up with the Mormon faith, so don't make those correlations. This is like a whole separate extreme. So Lori has been married quite a few times. In 1992, she did marry her high school sweetheart, Nelson Yanes, when she was 19 years old. But they did divorce about a year later. In 1995, she married William LaGoya, and the marriage seemed to be going really well for her, and they ended up having a son named Colby. But in 1998, she did end up getting divorced again. So in 2001, she did end up marrying Joseph Ryan, which is the first husband you need to keep in your head for this case. They ended up having Tylee Ryan, who was born September 14th, 2002. Joseph did end up adopting Colby after Tylee was born, but then 2004, her and Joseph Ryan ended up divorcing. She ended up telling Alex that Joseph was abusive, so Alex ended up attacking Joseph with a taser and threatened to kill him. So Alex was sentenced to 90 days in prison, and while he was in prison, he did write a lot of letters to his friends. In one, he had asked her to send her Joseph's address and his license plate number on a postcard. He had also asked her at some point to ask Lori for a picture of Joseph. In the letter it said, P.S. Can you get a picture from Lori of her ex-husband and send it to me? Some of the guys would love to hang with him. In 2005, this is where she met Charles Vallow. He was born August 17th, 1956. He was from Arizona and had met Lori at 49. He was hardworking, tall, charming. He dressed well and was known to be a successful businessman. He came from a very big family that was extremely close and had two boys from a previous marriage, Nicholas and Zachary. She ended up marrying Charles Vallow on February 24th, 2006 in Vegas. And they had 4 kids living under their roof, Nick, Zach, Colby, and Tylee. And they just seemed very happy, like the perfect family. Charles did convert from Catholic to the Latter-day Saints Church, which Lori was a part of. So in 2014, Nick, Zach, and Colby had moved out because they were so much older than Tylee. And this is when they decided to adopt JJ. This was Charles' nephew who was diagnosed with autism and just needed a lot more attention than what Charles' parents could give him. So Kay and Larry Woodcock are the grandparents. They did have custody of JJ before Charles and Lori adopted him. And they just honestly thought Charles and Lori could give him the attention he needed. And this year, Lori and Charles and the kids ended up moving to Hawaii to open a juice bar. And Lori and Tylee seemed to love Hawaii. They were were constantly posting pictures of beautiful scenery and just how happy they were to live there. The business did end up failing though. But in 2015, Lori became obsessed with this book series called Standing in Holy Places. It was authored by a guy named Chad Daybell, and she even bought it for all her friends to try to convince them to read it with her. And the books were about Doomsday, end of times, the things that kind of followed along with what her religious beliefs were. And it really focused on how to stay loyal to your faith while the world ends. And it seemed to make her increasingly radical. So let's talk about this author, Chad Daybell. Chad was born August 11th, 1968, and grew up in Utah. He was strange. He wasn't known to live a lavish life. He did meet a girl named Tammy in his teen years and ended up marrying her when he was 22. He graduated from Brigham Young University in 1992 with a journalism degree. His first job was a grave digger in local cemeteries, but ultimately him and Tammy had owned a publishing company in which he actually published his own books, Standing in Holy Places being a few of them. The couple ended up having 5 kids, and Chad was known to be very radical in the Mormon religion with this side of like Doomsday and all of this stuff. He claimed to be Mormon, but I'll be honest, his beliefs did not follow the Mormon faith, and he was known to be an extremist. He claimed that he speaks to a higher power due to his few near-death experiences. He claims he sees things before they happen and has his own portal in his closet in which he prays and sees visions in. So he moved to Salem, Idaho in 2015 because he claimed that God told him to. Chad referred to seeing people as light and dark. Dark individuals were people from this earth, but that were following Satan, where light people were followers of Jesus Christ. And he also had a writing partner, but they did not really end on good terms. They left around 2016, 2017, and wanted all ties cut. They claimed that Chad's writing was becoming extremely radical and said they feared that he was going to end up causing violence or death. So there was a podcast that Chad Daybell was a part of called Preparing a People, and they ended up having an event that Melanie Gibbs, Lori's cousin, and Lori attended. And this is where Lori and Chad met for the first time. And according to Melanie, by the end of this weekend, Chad had told Lori that they had been married in 7 previous lifetimes and were going to get married in 2 other lifetimes. And it really didn't take long before Lori started this emotional affair with Chad. And several weeks later, Charles was out of town, so Lori decided to have Chad over, along with a few other of the followers. They sat around and talked about deeper mysteries about God, and Chad just couldn't quit noticing Lori throughout this event. And he did everything in his power to make her the center of attention. He had ended up telling her that he believed that Lori was an eternal being and that she has had 21 previous lives. 5 on planet Earth, the same number of lives he's had on planet Earth. Lori was thrilled. She became obsessed over Chad. So Lori was really starting to join in to this cult. So Lori and Charles ended up moving to Arizona in 2016. And this is when Lori dug even deeper into her obsession with this book series. And her and Chad's relationship was growing stronger and stronger and stronger. And then on April 3rd, 2018, out of nowhere, Joseph Ryan dies. Supposedly it was a heart attack, but unfortunately he was cremated. And not much else is really known about his death because of this. And other series of events we hear about later, it's very unfortunate because there could have been something done to him. So Charles and Lori started having some serious problems in their marriage. Lori had become extremely obsessed with this new religion that Chad was funneling to her, and she was growing more and more detached from her family because of it. She was really starting to believe in this dark and light people and referred to dark individuals as zombies. And she was thought that she was the eternal spirit that had came to save the 144,000. But Lori and Charles were arguing every day, and Lori was extremely emotionally abusive. She was very controlling and just played a lot of mind games with this poor guy. And on January 21st, 2019, Charles was on a business trip. And the last 2 days, he could not get a hold of his kids. It was freaking him out, so he decided he was going home, and when he got to the airport, his ticket was canceled. So he had to buy an emergency ticket. But when he got to the airport back in Arizona, he still hadn't heard from Lori and the kids. So he goes to the parking lot and his truck is gone. So he then had to pay more money to take a taxi home. And when he got home, all the locks on the doors were changed. And this is when he realized that $35,000 were wiped from his bank accounts and then transferred it to an unknown account. And then the money disappeared. Nobody knows where this money went. And Charles was begging her to please give this money back because he had to pay people on his payroll and all the family cars were gone. So Charles contacted police. He tells the police about her new belief system, and there's police body cam footage that you can watch where he's explaining all this. He's pleading for Lori to get mental health help. He claimed she viewed herself as a god preparing for the second coming of Christ. And he also told her that she has to carry out this saving of 144,000 angels, and claimed his wife said she would kill him if he got in the way of that, and that there were angels waiting to dispose of his body for her to help her get away with it. But for some reason, the officers decided she had a normal state of mind. And that is when the police just kind of brushed off whatever Charles had to say. And by February, Charles had filed for divorce. He tried to serve her papers, but nobody could find her. Lori had disappeared for 58 days in Hawaii and ended up returning in April. But for some unknown reasons, Charles did decide to try to work on the marriage and ended up canceling the divorce. So during all this, Lori and Chad were doing the podcast Preparing a People together very often. Most of the topics were about the end of times, but through all these issues with Charles, Chad was emailing Lori quite often. He was telling her who was the light individuals and dark individuals in her family, and claimed that Tylee, JJ, and Charles all had dark spirits. Isn't that convenient? And now there's two Melanies. Melanie Gibb, but then there's Lori's niece, Melanie. And the niece, Melanie, said Chad and Lori talked all day and all night. And she did end up asking them why they didn't just divorce their partners and be together. And Lori and Chad just claimed they had a vision from the other side that told them that they didn't have to get divorced from their partners, that they needed to stay married. Melanie had also said that Lori had been talking a lot about the zombies, and that the zombies were spirits that took over people's bodies, and had said to Melanie that Charles was a zombie. And Chad had told her that Charles was no longer Charles. But she also told Melanie that JJ was a zombie, and had talked a lot about wanting to send JJ to Charles' sisters. And Lori had also talked about how Lori and Chad were on a mission to rid the world of zombies. So an interesting thing about this Melanie, that's her niece, was she had also started into this religious cult with Lori. And out of nowhere, Melanie and her husband Brandon got a divorce. Brandon claimed that Melanie demanded it, and Brandon was rather shocked because he thought their marriage was going great. But he claimed that it had to have been because of this cult that Lori had drug Melanie into. Lori and the kids had moved to another house since her and Charles were having a lot of issues. Lori had went to take JJ to school, and Tylee was at the house with her uncle Alex. And Charles showed up, and Alex says Charles seemed very aggravated and enraged when he showed up, and they ended up getting in a fight. Tylee supposedly came into the room with a baseball bat, and Charles had taken the bat out of her hand and tried to hit Alex in the back of the head with it. So Alex grabs a gun in another room and shoots Charles in the chest, and Charles dies. So there's body cam footage of Alex and Lori talking to the police, and it was just really weird. Lori was just making jokes and seeming just fine, was not upset at all that her husband had just died. And even the 911 call was really weird. Alex didn't seem concerned at all.
I'm in police in an ambulance.
What's the emergency there?
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
Okay, let me get the medics on the phone. And is he hurt or is he alive or?
Yeah, there's blood. He's not moving.
Okay, what part of his body is injured?
In the chest.
Okay, is he awake and responsive or unconscious?
Unconscious.
Okay, is he breathing?
I can't tell.
Are you willing to go over to him and check?
Sure.
Let me know if you see his chest going up and down. How old is he?
It's not moving. He's 60.
Okay, and are you wanting to start CPR?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I can walk you through it.
Okay.
Where's the
Okay.
gun now?
It's in the other room.
What's your name, sir?
My name is Alex. Last name is Cox. C-O-X.
Who else is there in the house with you?
Just me.
What's his name, your brother-in-law?
Charles Vallow.
And Alex and Lori's stories didn't match up at all. Alex said he was in the house alone with Charles, while Lori claimed she was there with the kids. But for some reason, they just believed that this was in self-defense and released Alex with no more questioning. And I cannot make this up, but that evening of her husband's death, Lori held a pool party at their house, and it was like nothing ever happened. And then the next day, she decided to tell Zach and Nick that their dad had died through text message, and she refused to answer any of their questions. And 4 days after his death, Lori contacted the life insurance policy to find out how she got money for Charles, and that is where she found out Kay had been put as the main beneficiary. So Lori ended up texting Kay a picture of the change of beneficiary form and said 5 kids and no money, and his sister gets everything. So JJ had gotten this service dog named Bailey, and they were best friends, and it really changed JJ's life. After Charles' death, Lori called the trainer and told him they had to get this dog, like right now. The dog trainer asked why, but she kind of just blamed it on Charles' death, and that's about it. But the trainer thought it was really weird because during a death or a traumatic event, that would be one of the bigger reasons to have a service dog. But it's just really sad that JJ was going through a lot and his mom just gave away this dog. So then Lori, JJ, Tylee, Melanie, her niece, and Alex all decide to move to Idaho, all in the same apartment complex in Rexburg. So Melanie, her niece, ended up asking her, like, do you really want to do this? Because he is still with his wife. But she said it doesn't matter because his wife is going to die, and claimed that Tammy was a zombie. She ended up enrolling JJ in school at the beginning of September 2019, but Tylee was actually never enrolled. She claimed that she graduated early. On September 8th, 2019, Lori and Alex took JJ and Tylee to Yellowstone, and this was the last time that Tylee was seen. And due to the move recently, family had a hard time figuring out that this was when Tylee was last seen, and she was missing and for how long. And when you ask neighbors, they actually explained that they hadn't seen Tylee since the first few weeks of September. But what's interesting is the same day they went to Yellowstone, Chad Daybell signs an application to increase Tammy's life insurance policy to the maximum amount. So September 9th, 2019, JJ did start school, and he was doing really well and making a lot of friends. So on September 17th, he was caught on security camera of one of the neighbors' houses, and this is thought to be the last time that JJ was seen. And on September 23rd, 2019, Lori calls the school and unenrolls JJ and says that she is planning to homeschool him from now on. And over the next 3 months, the family was growing really concerned. They hadn't heard from these kids at all, and the family was trying to give support from Charles' death, and they aren't getting any type of explanation on why these kids aren't talking to them. And at some point, Melanie, the niece, ended up asking Alex where the kids were, and Alex just said, "You don't want to know." And by December 20th, the children were filed missing. And on December 21st, Lori and Chad were named persons of interest. So in October, there's a storage unit that Lori ended up renting, and Lori, Chad, and Alex end up visiting the storage unit 9 times in October and once in November. But on February 3rd, 2020, after the kids are reported missing, the East Idaho News end up going to the storage unit because it is abandoned at this point. And they found all these kids' items: bikes, a scooter, winter clothing, a photo album of JJ and Tylee, sports equipment, JJ's backpack, a jersey with their older brother Colby's name on it, and blankets. So on October 2nd, we're bringing back in Brandon, you know, the ex-husband of the niece Melanie. He was near his car and felt something fly past his head and through his car window, and it completely shattered. And he turned around and saw what he thought was a paintball gun, but the shooter fled the scene. But Brandon knew the car they were in. He couldn't identify the driver at all, but he knew that car belonged to Charles Vallow. And how is a dead man's car being driven by anybody? People strongly believe that Alex was the driver of this car, and Brandon says that he does believe it is Alex, and he has proof that he can't necessarily talk about right now due to the court case that's going on. So a friend had said that he had FaceTimed Chad, and Chad had talked to him about the fact that they were really tight on money lately, and he was doing the best to hold his marriage together, but he kept having a vision of Tammy dying. And a little while after that, Tammy was bringing in groceries, and a masked man with a paintball gun started firing at her. She screamed for Chad while they ran away. She ended up calling 911, but she also posted this Facebook post and said she just didn't know who it was or who would want to do this to her. And about 10 days later, Chad ended up calling 911 because evidently Tammy had died in her sleep. He said that she was coughing the night before, but he just really didn't think much of it. And Chad completely declined an autopsy. In November 2019, Chad ended up receiving $430,000 in her life insurance policy. So 2 weeks after Tammy's death, Lori and Chad get married in Hawaii. Police really started watching them after they got married and realized there was no sign of children. But on October 10th, 2019, Tylee's Venmo account shows that she sent money to her brother Colby with a message that said, "We love you." October 16, 2019, Tylee sends Colby money again, but with a heart emoji. And on October 25th, 2019, a friend in Arizona of hers ended up receiving a text that said, "Hi, miss you guys too, love ya." And this was in response to something that the friend said a few weeks ago, saying that she missed her and been thinking of her, but she really felt like it wasn't Tylee. And also, they found out that the couple had been lying to people. Chad had claimed Lori never had children at all, and Lori had been telling people that Tylee died years ago. And the police also found out that Lori hadn't filled JJ's medication since January of that year. Tylee's bank card was still open and was used all of September, but on November 26, 2019, the police conducted a welfare check for JJ requested by Kay and Larry Woodcock. And when the police got there, Chad literally said that he really didn't know Lori that well and didn't have her number. And Alex told police that JJ was staying with his grandparents, but his grandparents, Kay and Larry, were the ones who called the welfare check. So then the claim was that JJ was in Arizona with Melanie Gibbs. Melanie, though, had said she hadn't seen JJ in weeks and ended up telling the police that Lori and Chad had both asked her to lie to the police about having JJ. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Chad called her and his voice kind of sounded a little shaky and told her if the police call, not to answer. Said the police are at Kay's house looking for the children. She then said, I thought the children were there. And he said, nothing, don't worry about it. Well, 30 minutes later, Lori calls acting completely fine, told her everything was fine, but wanted to ask a favor. Lori then tells her to go to the park and take a picture of some kids and send that to the police and say that's her kids. And then Chad had suggested, well, maybe you should go to a movie theater and take some pictures and send it to the police of kids. But Melanie refused to all of this. She was not going to lie because she was also very worried about these kids. So January 3rd, 2020, the police went to Chad's house with a search warrant and they recovered 43 items. There were computers, cell phones, journals, documents, and medication, and they sent all this to the FBI for further analysis. And the police went back the next day for another search warrant, and Chad and Lori had packed their whole house and moved to Hawaii. And with the airport footage, we know it wasn't with the kids. So on January 25th, they served Lori to have to provide Tylee and JJ to the Idaho Department of Human and Welfare within 5 days. And this is when they started searching Alex's phone. So the day after Tylee was seen, Alex's phone was traced from 2:42 to 3:37 a.m. They were at Lori's apartment. From 9:21 to 11:52 a.m. they were at Chad Daybell's property. In the last day that JJ was seen, Lori had been referring to both the kids as a zombie and that they were dark individuals and following Satan. And then on January 29th, 2020, Kay and Larry Woodcock filed an emergency guardianship over JJ. And then January 30th, Lori never produced the kids and missed the deadline. The good thing about the police taking these kids being missing so seriously, though, is that they actually decided to look a little bit closer into Tammy's death. And what they found was not the best. Lori had already bought a wedding ring 2 weeks before Tammy's death, and she was planning to get married to Chad even before Tammy died. And on October 2nd, she was looking up wedding dresses. So on December 10th, 2019, they ended up getting Tammy's death ruled as suspicious, and Tammy's body was exhumed. In February 4th, 2020, Tammy's autopsy was released, but those records are actually not available to the public. And authorities do allege with the first incident with Tammy of her being shot at with a paintball gun, that Lori and Chad conspired with Alex Cox to try to kill Tammy, but just were not able to carry it out. So then, a little out of nowhere, Alex marries this girl named Zulema on November 29th, 2019 in Vegas, just like Lori and Charles. And Lori was a big fan of Zulema. She loved Zulema. And then randomly, Melanie, the niece, gets married in Las Vegas to a man named Ian. And it was only a couple days after Alex's marriage. So on December 12th, 2019, Alex is found found unresponsive. He hadn't even been married 2 weeks. Zulima's 25-year-old son was the one who ended up finding Alex and calling 911, but he didn't even know Alex's last name, and he kept referring to Alex as my mom's boyfriend. So that kind of proves that he really didn't even know this guy. The autopsy did end up ruling it as a blood clot, but a lot of people have argued that this blood clot could have been formed because of stress. And so the older brother, Colby, ended up putting a YouTube video out there pleading for his mom to just let people know where Tylee and JJ are. So on February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested by the Kauai police on a $5 million bond and was extradited back to Rexburg. She was charged with 2 felony counts of discretion, 2 counts of non-support of a dependent person, resisting or obstructing a police officer, contempt of court, and willful disobedience of court process or order. On November 5th, 2020, East Idaho News received recording of Lori saying she was going to murder her ex-husband Joseph Ryan. So too bad he was cremated, but she said she had become closer to God and there was no reason for her to feel this way towards Joseph anymore. Okay, to go a few months back, June 9th, 2020, around 7 a.m., there was a search warrant for Chad Daybell's property. Unidentified human remains were found near a barn on Chad's property. They were later confirmed to be Tylee and JJ. Disclaimer before I start talking about how the kids were found, please take caution because this is gruesome and really hard to hear. So I will put a timestamp right here of where to forward to where I'm not talking about them being found anymore. JJ had duct tape all around his chin, forehead, and head, and his arms and legs were also duct taped together and inside a trash bag. Tylee's body had been dismembered and burned, and Tylee's body was found in different places around the cemetery, but they were buried about 50 yards apart from each other. So Chad was watching them dig up these kids. So around 11 a.m., Chad tried to make a run for it, and police ended up arresting him about a mile from his property for concealment, alteration of evidence, the murder of both children, first-degree murder of Tammy, and insurance fraud. And prosecutors did say that they were going to seek the death penalty, and they called the murders especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. And this ended up changing Lori's 2 counts of non-support of dependent children into first-degree murder charges for the children, and 1 count of conspiracy to murder for Charles Vallow. The indictment alleges that between October 26, 2018 and June 9, 2020, the couple did endorse and espouse religious beliefs for the purpose of encouraging and or justifying these killings. In June 8, 2021, Lori was committed to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. A psychologist deemed her not fit for trial, and a judge agreed she could not help in her defense. So she's committed for restorative treatment. On September 8th, 2021, she was deemed to stay 180 more days in a mental institution at her hearing. But this does mean that Chad Daybell and her are having a trial together. So Chad's trial is also pushed back to March 2022 now. Investigators do believe that they killed Tylee and JJ in September 2019 because of what they saw happen to Charles. And they do believe that Chad could be the one that dug those graves because he was a grave digger. They also believe that the shooting of Charles couldn't be in self-defense because Charles was actually a semi-pro baseball player at one point, and if he was going to swing to hit Alex, it wouldn't have just made a tiny place on his head like he claimed. It probably would have killed him. So there are a lot of questions about this case that we are still looking for answers for, and until Lori is well, I don't think we'll ever hear them. The police are asking anyone that was at Yellowstone the day that Tylee was there with her family, send them pictures if the family or Tylee is in the background. Please recheck them. Please, it'll take 10 minutes. Just look. And the police are also still investigating Charles' death and to build a case for him. Chad's children, though, have been pretty vocal at the fact that they think Lori and Alex set Chad up and that he has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. But I think it's pretty clear that Chad is actually kind of the cult leader in all this. But I wanted to cover this case in Cult Christmas because I think it's very important to show what having a member in a cult can do to a family. This is obviously a pretty extreme experience, but like at the end of the day, it can cause a lot of heartache, and don't ever feel like you shouldn't get help for someone that you believe could be in anything like this. But thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in to Cult Christmas. And if you haven't already, please go rewatch my Unsolved in West Virginia series because I worked really hard on it and I just love it so much. And there's about to be a second season next year. Also, leave any comments about what you feel about this case and if you have any info that I might have missed because, gosh, this was a lot. Also, please like and subscribe for me and hit that notification button. That way you're notified the next time I upload. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!